Thank you for listening to Lone Star Community Radio. This program was broadcasted and recorded live from the LSCR studios in downtown Conroe, Texas. Lone Star Community Radio is supported by listeners like you. Donate and sponsor today. For more information on getting involved with Lone Star Community Radio, contact us at lscrstudios@gmail.com or visit us online at www.irlonestar.com.
Hey friends, and welcome back to another episode of Genuine Business Stories, where we have real front porch chats that inspire success. Every year in the United States, over 4 to 5.5 million new businesses are started. But the journey isn't easy. Nearly 1 in 5 won't make it through their first year. And by year 5, about half have closed their doors. That reality is why we know firsthand how challenging small business ownership can be. And it's also one of the main reasons we started Genuine Business Stories, to provide inspiration, encouragement, and real conversations that remind entrepreneurs they're not alone. Here on our show, we share authentic stories from business owners who face the ups and downs, pushed through obstacles, and found ways to keep building. Because hearing those stories not only inspire, it sparks ideas that can help others succeed. Today, we're joined by Ashley, a dedicated insurance professional whose career shows that anything that happens is because of her experience, her persistence, and her passion. She started out in customer-facing leadership as an assistant manager with Enterprise, then transitioned to insurance industry with AAA, where she was an agent, where she spent nearly a decade serving customers in both California and Arizona. In November of 2020, Ashley made the leap to become an independent insurance broker. And over the last 5 years, she's built an agency around service, trust, and advocacy for her clients. Ashley's story is about taking lessons from every step of the journey and channeling them into a business that reflects her values and vision. So let's dive into Ashley's story. Good morning, Ashley. How are you doing today?
Good morning. That was a great introduction. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So, Ashley, the one thing that when we're going through there, you're now in Texas.
Yes.
So now that you're in Texas, let's go ahead, since Alliance is going to be the biggest part of the story, and let's discuss when you came to Texas and what brought you to Texas.
My family and I, we moved to Texas in October 28th, 2021. So it's going to be just 4 years next month. And it's funny because when you're not from here, everybody always asks, like, how did you get here? Like, what brought you here? And honestly, when we were living in Arizona, my husband and I said that if we were ever to move somewhere, it was going to be Texas. We had never visited Texas, but we knew that that's somewhere we wanted to go. And so we had planned a trip to the Grand Tetons in September of 2021. And last minute, I said, let's go on a road trip to Texas. He's like, we already have the plans. We already have reservations, everything. I'm like, but this is our opportunity because you have taken a week off. Let's just drive to Texas. So we did. Instead of going on vacation in the motorhome, and exploring, we drove to Texas. Took us 2 days. At that time, my son was 4. So can you imagine being in a car for 2 days, being 4 years old? We did it. We drove out here and we just kind of explored just to see what Texas was about. But let me back up just a second, because how did we decide to come take a vacation in Montgomery? When we were trying to think about if we were going to move to Texas, where would we go? A couple important things for me was education and medical, because my son's going to be coming into kindergarten and we wanted to make sure that he was going to get a good education, because in Arizona, the school district was good, but it wasn't that great. And when you don't have a great school district, you're not going to have good doctors. And so we also needed to make sure we had good doctors, because my husband has some health issues that we needed to make sure that we had good doctors for him to go to follow-ups and any kind of procedures that he needed. So I originally looked at Tyler, Texas, and then I said, well, it's a little too far from doctors where the town we were looking at. It was about 45 minutes. And I was like, that's a little too far. Then I went to Austin, and then I said, no, that's a little too liberal for me. So we're a little bit more on the conservative side. We're not super political, but then I saw Lake Conroe, and lake was also a big thing. If you look, Tyler has a lake, Austin has a lake, Montgomery has a lake. So lake, education, and doctors. So we drove out to Montgomery to check it out. My poor son had to sit in the car for the next 5 days after we drove here for 2 days, looking around different neighborhoods to see if this is potentially somewhere we wanted to land. Then we drove home for 2 days. On our 2-day drive home, my husband and I, we had a conversation. Well, is this something that we want to do? About 45 minutes away from home, we're saying, let's put our house on the market. The next week, we put our house on the market. And in 2021, the housing market was just on fire. In 24 hours, we got 9 offers. And so we went into contract with one of the offers we accepted. We did not want to bring any of our toys with us to Montgomery because we had just so much. Living in Arizona and desert or lake, you have all the toys. So we sold our boat, our jet skis, our scooters, our motorhome, our Can-Am, and our house, all within 3 weeks. And then we were on our way.
That almost shows it was meant to be, with everything falling in line and selling that quick.
I agree. And my husband and I aren't super big on planning. Like, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. It's going to work out, you know? So we were on our way out here. We signed for our new house in New Mexico on the side of the road. We did DocuSign, and then we drove out here, and we ended up in Walden, actually. And then we ended up not liking Walden. So then we bought some acreage out in Dobbin. We lived there for 3 years, renovated that house. And we realized my son needed some friends because there was no kids in the area. Being out on acreage, you would think like his quad and his motorcycle and the pond was going to be sufficient, but it just wasn't. So then we ended up back in Walden. So that's where we are.
Well, fantastic. So I want to dive into your early years, and I mean your childhood. Did you have any entrepreneurial ventures when you were growing up?
Zero.
Nope.
I never even want to become an entrepreneur. It was never talked about. It was never something that we brought up. My parents were not entrepreneurs. Nobody in my family. So no, it just came about, honestly, super unexpectedly.
So you were with Enterprise Rent-A-Cars for a while in management there, and then you become an agent with AAA. What took you to AAA for an agency?
So working for Enterprise Rent-A-Car, it's a great stepping stone right out of college because they require you to have a college degree, and they really help you learn the management style and work your way up. And so working with car rentals, and a lot of customers came in because of a car accident. After working there for almost 4 years, I needed to find something different. And so I said, well, I want to be a claims adjuster. Well, I had applied for a claims adjuster position for AAA, and they called me and told me I wasn't qualified because I didn't have any experience. And so they said, but we do have a position available. It's a sales position. I said, tell me more. And they're like, well, it's all commission. And I said, I can't do all commission. And they're like, well, why don't you try it out? So I tried it. And then I ended up becoming the #1 insurance agent in all of Southern California. And then I was like, okay, I guess I can do this. So that was kind of just some of my background as far as management and getting into sales. And I don't look at myself as a salesperson. I look at myself as an educator. I just educate what I'm selling. And if it's something that client wants or needs, I'm just going to explain it to them on what's going to be the best for them. And it just works out that way.
It's because you're trustworthy.
Thank you.
As an owner of a commercial insurance brokerage, I take who I refer business to seriously, because if I refer somebody home and auto and they mess it up, that could end up having an impact back on the commercial accounts. And I completely trust you to refer you my customers. You're an amazing agent. It's fun to work with you.
Vice versa.
Thank
Because
you.
I can do commercial, but it's just not my jam. So I give it to you because I know you'll take care of my people.
Thank you. Mentors and role models. Did you have any that influenced you throughout your career?
None that I can think of on the top of my head. I mean, I had some good, teachers growing up, but none of them led me to be an entrepreneur. I was always that determined individual. I always wanted to be different from a lot of people, kind of stand out and not do everything that everybody else was doing. Granted, I had that group of friends that was all doing one certain thing. And I always wanted to take it a little step further just to differentiate myself instead of being immersed into the crowd.
I gotcha. So was there a moment that sparked the leap? Because going from AAA, my background was with one of our large Fortune 100s. What sparked the leap to go to independent broker? Because it is a different world.
It is. So AAA is a captive agency. And for those who don't know what a captive agency is, it means you offer their product and their product only. Well, AAA in Arizona, when I had worked there, they had a small independent agency that we were able to offer other carriers outside of AAA when they didn't fit. And I was so accustomed to having all of these options, even though I worked for a captive insurance agency. Then they decided to take away that captive or that independent side, and they wanted to go back to 100% captive. When that happened, I knew that there was more I can do for my clients, because working for a captive, I only had that one option. And that means I wasn't always going to say yes. There was going to be times I had to say no. So my husband had been telling me, well, why don't you open up your own independent agency? And I said, I don't know how to do that. I don't even know the first steps. So when I was told that the independent side of AAA was no longer in existence, that's what gave me the push. And I had found out about that probably early October of 2021. So not even 30 days later, I opened up my independent agency and I had left AAA.
Every experience in our careers are a training ground for the businesses that we one day have opened. I try to reflect back on everything that I have done since my very beginning career, which was actually in engineering as a design draftsman.
Oh, that's what my dad did. He was a draftsman.
And I went from there to IT. So you've known me long enough. Both of those are nose to the grindstone and not really talkers.
Yeah.
I made a good living, but it was always contrary to my personality, who wanted to be out meeting with other people and talking to people. And my girlfriend tells me, you do not have to talk to everybody when we're out. And I'm like, yes, I do.
I'm the introvert of my relationship. My husband's more of the extrovert, and I'm fine with just hanging out at home with my little circle of family and not going out and doing things. Back when I was younger, I was a little bit more opposite. I was always like, what's going on Friday night?
Yeah. So what were some of the biggest challenges you faced your first year?
So when I worked for AAA, they had given me a phone number to use for clients to call me. And probably about 2 years prior to me leaving AAA, they made all of the agents take ownership of that phone number. So that phone number now belonged to me. Now, mind you, I worked for AAA for almost 8 years. So a lot of people had that phone number. So when I left AAA, I kept that phone number. So even with the non-compete clause, they were calling me. So my first year was actually super successful. It blew me out of the water. Like, I had zero expectations, and I was just overwhelmed with like everybody that wanted to continue their trust in me. When they would call me to make a change or add a vehicle, I simply just told them I no longer worked for AAA, but I opened up my own agency, and now I have other options in the event that you ever wanted to explore those. So my first year was actually the best year that I probably had. I mean, my year is, going on because I'm now almost into my 5th year, but my first year was just overwhelmingly like amazing.
You've done an amazing job. My former job in leadership with the larger company over agents, what you've done, especially because of COVID, it's actually pretty amazing.
Thank you.
COVID, with the way it changed the home and auto side of business, was very much a lead-driven business where you purchase leads. A lot of agents did, and that's how you started helping to feed your staff. When COVID hit, then the larger agents, it was a bid process. They had a lot of staff that they had to feed. and they really spent the money to do it. And you can't blame them.
Right.
But it priced a lot of the smaller agents out of that market because the leads you were getting, all of a sudden you realize they're going, you're the 10th person that has called me, stop. And you go, they're recycling leads coming back to me, and people are not happy. So the ability to do what you did, living through COVID, because that's been like a bad hangover. It's just now starting to feel like that cloud that they placed on us is just starting to lift for businesses.
Yeah, it's lifting a little bit. Well,
Yeah.
And then I had opened up my agency, right? And then a year later, almost to the month, we decided to move to Texas, which was like starting an agency all over again. I knew
Mhm.
nobody.
Yeah. I mean, and you've done a fantastic job. So what was one of the toughest early rejections, and how did you bounce back? Or have you just been one of those amazing business owners that God kind of put his hand out and said, you know what, I'm going to carry you through this and you're going to have some fun?
I think I've definitely been very blessed. Of course, you get rejections when people don't want to go with the product that you're offering. But at the end of the day, people will come back because they'll realize she answered the phone. She was responsive. So when I was shopping and calling 10 other people and spending hours of unnecessary work, you could have just called me and I would have been very responsive with you. So it's just realizing that, like, you not to get your feelings hurt because, I take it personal sometimes. And sometimes when people leave me because the grass they think is greener on the other side, they've come back. Because when they've left me, I left it saying, if anything ever changes, I would be happy to help you again. Instead of, ignoring
Instead
them.
of being a brat like a lot of agents are,
Yeah,
that throw a temper tantrum when somebody leaves them.
they do.
Look, insurance has gone through the roof, especially here in Texas and with your home and your auto, but the home is what I think so many people realize because of the property taxes too. And by the time you combine it, then a lot of us have customers that 3 years later, that homeowner's policy is double what it was, sometimes triple.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden a family that qualified at one area for a mortgage is trying to figure out how to pull an extra $600, $700, $800 a month out of their pocket to cover their escrow account for their taxes and insurance.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, was there a turning point where you thought this is going to work? But it sounds to me like even through COVID, you just already knew that.
I don't want it to seem like everything
I
is like
think it is-
rainbows and butterflies, but I think because I'm such a determined person, I won't give up. And failure is definitely not in my vocabulary. Sometimes no motivation is in my vocabulary, but to try to get yourself through that and take it 1 month at a time. You have to just set yourself small goals. Some of my friends will say, well, what's your goal for the year? Well, I don't make goals because I don't want to fail. So if I don't make goals, I'm not going to fail.
I always set 2 goals, realistic and unrealistic. And undersell and over-deliver is how I've spent most of my life, especially in corporate America. The underselling with my personality was always going to be sufficient enough not to get in trouble. But if I could over-deliver, then nobody was expecting it, and it was received a little differently.
100% agree. Like if you think that you're going to get that quote out to them in 20 minutes, is that realistic? No. But is it realistic to get to them by the end of the day and then get it to them in 20 minutes? They're going to be happy.
Yeah, well, a big part of what we do is setting expectations, especially on the commercial side. If I have to take something out to a non-standard market because of the risk, then it is setting expectations that you're not getting a quote back today.
No.
It's got to go to underwriting, and then underwriting sends it out to another company's underwriting, and it is just a process that drags it out. That we live in an impatient world.
We do. We live in a world where they want everything instantaneously, and it's just not always realistic.
So I find that life's like a snowball. Negative thoughts. The more you breed negative thoughts, the more negative is going to come into your life. The more you breed positive thoughts, the more positive is going to come in.
I agree.
And part of that is because I believe when you're looking for the positive, you're not looking for something that can discourage you, because you're going to find, okay, well, I didn't make the sales goals here, but I know that these 2 or 3 accounts I brought on, the relationship I built, they're not going to shop me every year. So it's going to be a good retention account, because there are good accounts and there are bad accounts. And that good account is the one that lasts. I remember when I was with the company I was with, the acquisition cost was a little less for us as independent. That acquisition cost was around $300 and something bucks per customer for leads by the time you balanced out with close ratios. So as an agent, you weren't profitable until the first or second renewal, depending upon whether it was a 6-month or an annual policy. A little different for us. So were you fairly quickly with your business able to pay yourself a paycheck?
So when I was with AAA, they had, excuse me, incentives, and I just seemed to always hit them. And so I've gone on cruises. They've given out cash bonuses. So because of COVID, we were supposed to go on another cruise. But with COVID happening, they decided to just pay out the agents instead of doing in a lump sum instead of going on the cruise because it was COVID. So I had gotten that lump sum and I just had it saved. So when I left and went independent, you don't get a paycheck from carriers for the first good 60 to 90 days because they pay in the arrears once, commissions have been reconciled and whatnot. So I kind of lived on that lump sum for the first 90 days or so, and then started slowly getting a paycheck. And I hear a lot of agencies saying that they're not profitable, but I had super low overhead. And so when you have really low overhead, you don't have all of these expenses. So you're able to start giving yourself a paycheck a lot sooner. So I don't have any employees. It's just me and just what expenses it costs as far as like the programs that you use, the rent for wherever you're leasing your space. So I have a space in Montgomery that I just lease. I don't have to pay utilities there, I don't have to pay for internet. So like my overhead is just so much lower than if I were to have a larger office with staff.
I find in our business, captured agents have to generate a lot more revenue to become profitable. An example where I was at, the staff to open was 3 a month before you ever started generating revenue. I can remember with some of the management, some of the sales leaders when they rolled that new model out. Now, granted, that new model, agents made a lot of money, but as we started discussing with them, this is a poor business model, and career people were telling us, you don't know business, and we were actually going, actually, you don't for small business. They still rolled it out, but we can operate probably up to $1.5 million in written premium without having to put staff on, where you can maintain your book before you have to add somebody. You may want a VA before then, but with the rules of a captured agent, you're going to have staff a lot sooner. They're going to make you have it. I know the philosophy is let's get more salespeople out there, but if they're not commissioned only, then those salespeople had better be able to close or you'll get behind pretty quick.
Yeah.
So always look and say that obstacles, they're not stop signs, they're just instructions. Continue to move forward. So what is your approach now for reinvesting back into your business?
I do not buy leads. I do not spend any kind of money on that. I do have a virtual assistant that helps me with like my social media as far as marketing and things like that. I am part of the chamber and part of WOMTech. So I do those 2 networking groups. But outside of that, it's just word of mouth. So I don't have to pay for those leads. So that's a cost I don't have to worry about. It's just literally just my networking. I do donate some money to like the school districts and things like that. So I try to be involved in my son's school as much as I can.
Well, we met at WOMTech, and we had Kiki on, the owner of WOMTech, last week on the program, and that is probably the best networking organization that I've ever been a part of, just as far as the cost ratio.
Right.
I'm not a person, I own a business. There are other networking groups that want goals and accountability and stuff. I won't tend to them, because if I wanted to be micromanaged, I'd go back to corporate America.
I was part of one of those groups where you had to pay, it seemed like thousands of dollars. You had weekly goals and things like that. And after 2 years, I realized, you know what? I need to find something different. That's when I found WOMTech, because I knew Jennifer, and the cost is just so minimal, and not having those goals and expectations in the back of your mind, it really helps the networking naturally flow versus feeling like you're pressured to get to know the other members of the group, so that way they're going to refer you. It all just comes naturally, because they genuinely see who you are. And when somebody's looking for auto or home insurance, they're automatically going to think Ashley, or they're looking, to insure their business. They're going to naturally think Clint, because I know him and he's genuine and he's not out there just to see how many referrals he can get.
Yeah. So have you ever done an analysis on your return on investment for the network groups and the time? Because I find a lot of us, I get to where I look and go, this group cost me X amount, this group cost me this amount, and you have that total, but then we forget just how many hours in the month we will spend, whether it's ribbon cuttings with chambers or networking event times. Have you ever stopped to figure that out?
No, and I don't know. I don't know if I have. I have the want to really sit in and calculate on that. But I will tell you, I've been in WOMTech a little over a year now, and my ROI has definitely been paid for a good couple years. I'm part of the chamber. My ROI is not as good, but I will tell you, I've always been a chamber member, even when I worked for AAA, because they paid for my chamber membership. So when I opened up my agency, there was no question if I was going to be a chamber member. So when I was in Arizona, I was a member. And then now here in Texas, I've been a member. And it's just getting your face out there and trying to let them know that you're an option for them, because we all have options. And I work with a lot of lenders and realtors. And of course, I want to be their first option. But realistically, as long as I'm on their list, that makes me happy. Because if they've got, a list of 2 to 3 insurance agents, they may suggest one over the other, because sometimes personalities just don't jive, And so I'm more towards people that are a little bit more laid back, that want to learn a little bit. I love first-time home buyers, because they don't know anything, and their philosophy, my philosophy for them is they don't know what they don't know. So if I can explain that to them, it's a lot easier for me versus somebody that is a seasoned homeowner and says, I already know what coverage I want, but do you? Like, has anybody ever sat down, taken the time to explain what the coverages even mean? 9 times out of 10, they don't know. So that's why I like the first-time homebuyers, regardless of their age, because they're a little bit more eager to learn.
I remember a time where I had taken over my parents' insurance quite a few years ago, and I was discussing coverages with my dad. And my dad said, son, just go do what I asked you to. And I looked at him, and he was frustrated with me, and he was one of my best friends, so this normally didn't happen. Or I can take it back to my other agent. I said, Dad, I will dial the number for you right now. You can go back to her. I didn't ask you to come to me. But I don't walk in and tell you how to build a house. So you're not going to walk in and tell me how to cover you. What you have the right to do, Dad, is to tell me what you don't want. But my job is to explain these coverages to you and why I feel certain coverages are better. And that was when Dad looked at me and went, you know what, you're right. But insurance, whether it is your business insurance or your personal insurance, there's not a tangible payoff in a person's mind. There is no payoff until there is a travesty, a tragedy, a crisis that comes in. And then that's where the payoff comes in to go, wow, I'm glad I had insurance. But until then, it's not like your streaming services where at least when you're paying, you're getting some satisfaction and some enjoyment out of it. There's no pleasure in having that money come out of your account each month for insurance. And, but you have a saying, and what is that saying that you tell your customers because you use it with our network groups?
I love insurance, so you don't have to.
I love that, but it's true.
It is. Because nobody wants to talk about insurance. It's usually like the last on their to-do list. And then when that to-do list is filled, insurance gets moved on to the next page because they really don't want to talk about it. Like it's almost like that heartburn, in most families. Nobody ever wants to talk about auto and home insurance. So that's why when they call me, it is generally something that I care about for each and individual household.
So what do you find is the best way that you get customers? Are you doing social media? I know with our group that they will come in and say, hey, this person's looking for it on one of the social medias, and we'll refer each other out. Is it your referrals because you built such a loyal customer base? Is it your networking? Well,
it's referrals. It's definitely referrals. I do work with some lenders and realtors. Now, while those are really good, it is my current and past clients, believe it or not, people who have left me refer friends and family because just because it didn't work out for them at this point in their life, it doesn't mean I wasn't a good agent for them. Just circumstances made things change, right? And so I'm going to say probably 80% of my business is referrals from current and past clients.
Yeah.
Because that's a true testimony right there because they've worked with me or are working with me. And so they can genuinely pass on my name and know that I will take care of their friends and family, aunts, uncles, neighbors.
Consistency with our chambers, our network groups, showing up, many times that's a lot more valuable than a big ad budget where you're just spending money on leads and ads coming through. So we discussed, you've already got a virtual assistant. Do you foresee hiring any licensed staff as you grow, or what is your thoughts on that?
No, I am not going to be hiring. I don't have any desire to hire. I figured if I could, quote unquote, train my clients, to be good clients and not needy clients, I can manage them on my own. So you had mentioned in the beginning that an agent usually will manage about 1 to 1.5 million of their book, and then they need to start hiring. I've surpassed that probably a few years ago, and I'm still managing it on my own. And it's because I have great clients. When I don't have great clients, I'm okay with them leaving. And I can be a little pickier, I guess you could say. Of course, I want to insure everybody, but at the same time, I can't insure everybody because then I wouldn't be who I am and how I run my business. I don't want to be the biggest agency on the block. I'm not going to be hiring 10, 20 agents so that way I get, all of these award-winning prizes for being recognized. I want to be just recognized for just being me. And not how big my agency is or how successful my agency is, because to me, I'm successful because I'm able to manage it all on my own.
I think for the home and auto side, the size that you're managing with yourself, you've got your processes in order. That would be a little easier for me as a commercial agent to manage that number because the premiums are larger, so it's less customers to get to that volume than it is with home and auto. So, I know you're efficient. I've heard compliments about you, but your processes are good. Your customers are amazing. Customers. So that is very much a positive. And with our world, the way it's changed with virtual assistants, there are a lot of tasks that we can now hire and not have near the overhead with a virtual assistant to help us with stuff. Part of what I am thinking about doing next year is I'm tired of Accord Forms applications, supplemental applications, and bringing on a VA so that I can do what I enjoy, which is to be out networking in the community and that type of stuff. But, I don't necessarily know that was a viable option. 8-10 years ago.
Right. Now, my VA, she only does my social media. So she is not customer facing. She does not deal with any of my clients. That is all on me. So if I need to remarket a client, that's on me because I want to try to make sure that I'm retaining those clients. So you're going to have to shop them. And sure, you'd rather them stay where they are, but do you want them to leave? Do you want them to go shop? No. So you're going to try to remarket them and place them somewhere else that's a little bit more competitive at that time.
Yeah, I struggle with both schools of thought for myself. As long as I am the only one forward-facing, and if I hired a VA, they would not face or interact with my customers. I would provide them the information. But it also limits my growth if I am the one that always has to be closing that sale. So I think that goes to all of our goals. And I'll be honest with you, my goals, they probably change monthly as to my energy level. When my energy level is really good and I'm not feeling worn down, then I'm wanting to quickly get to a point to hire more staff to grow faster. When I am feeling drained, I'm just fine with where I'm at and not having to deal with employees.
I did think about hiring somebody. It was in the beginning of the summer. I thought about it. And of course, I talked to my husband and he says, what was your mission when you first opened? Does that change your mission or does that expand it? And I said, well, you're right. It does change. And it changes the way I've always thought about how I was going to continue running my agency. So it wasn't that he was trying to stop me from doing it. He was just bringing me back down to reality because I was thinking, all of these great things. I can hire somebody and I won't have to do all of the work and I can just sit back a little bit more, go out networking a little bit more. But that's not why I opened it. I opened it so that way I talk to every single client. I build a relationship with every single client, not my employee. They don't want to be talking to so-and-so when I'm the one who wrote their policy. That's what makes me different.
So see, I see that you work with customer loyalty, and that is earned in small amounts and not big sales, but it is earned over time. And with your model, that is what that gives you the ability to do, is to earn that loyalty through most all of your customers. So, I'm curious about something. Do you have a story where you helped a customer and you knew that with where they were at, that it really made a difference to them?
With a lot of, especially older people being on fixed incomes, and I have some of them that say, my house is paid off. I don't need home insurance. So just walking them through why it's a good idea to keep homeowners insurance. Could we go through every single endorsement to see if they need that today? Because maybe they needed that years ago, but with their life the way it is today, maybe they don't need certain coverage, or maybe they do need certain coverage, or maybe we can play with some of the deductibles because they do have money saved, but they just don't have a good cash flow. But in the event something catastrophic happens, they will have that deductible. So to keep your annual premium a little bit lower, let's raise that deductible. So it depends on that client and what they're going through in their life. So it's a lot of the older clients that I have to kind of work through line by line. And they appreciate that.
Well, that is good. As we go through here, where do you see Allegiance in 5 years?
I don't really have goals. So I just kind of take it month by month, like I already told you. So I really don't have a huge goal for 5 years. The thing that I really want is to be able to still manage it. So as long as my lights are on, my bills are being paid at home, that's what makes me happy. I'm fine with that. And another thing is too, I do want to insure a lot of clients, but at the same time, they have to realize not only am I an agency owner, but I'm a mom and I'm a wife. And I do have a life outside of that. And we do like to go on vacation. And when clients call, a lot of times I won't tell people I'm on vacation, but they can kind of hear it in the background sometimes, And if they're my current clients, I'll say, Ashley, just call me when you get back. And those are the clients that have stayed with me. The clients that realize that family and vacation time is a necessity.
And those are hard to come by. I have found that individuals that you have the more personal relationships with are the ones that will think they can text and want something at 9 o'clock at night. And
Yes.
if it's not an emergency, then I'm going to tell them they'll get it in the morning.
I have a lot of clients that have been with me for years that they'll text and say, hey, this was on my mind. Just respond back to me on Monday. So like they just didn't want to forget to text me or email me, but they know that it's the weekend and I wasn't going to respond. And so they're fine with that. And I do have a lot of clients still almost 5 years later that had been with me since the AAA days and that they refuse to leave me because they know that I'm going to continue to answer the phone for them and I'm going to continue to advocate for them. So they're just going to stay with me.
So you write also in California and Arizona.
California, Arizona, Nevada, and Texas. I'm starting to hold off on what I write in Nevada and California just because the market out there is just super hard and I just can't keep up with it. So I get a lot of dual residencies with Arizona and California with a lot of vacationers. So I have different referrals if I'm not a good market for California for them.
You know, I found that California, New York, New Jersey, they all have such different rules than the rest of the country that I applaud you for still doing business in California. I know there are other large insurance companies that have pulled out. And, you know, and to some degree with where the rates have gone, you know, if an insurance carrier comes to you and shows where they're taking losses, then the Department of Insurance is generally going to grant them the increases.
Right.
When the one state said no, then three majors said, okay, we're leaving. The only question that I've had somewhat is, are we just in a position now since COVID that there's not being any pushback on our insurance carriers, you know, when they're coming asking for rate increases, you know, and I know with catastrophes, especially being in Texas, that we see a lot of them, but a lot of this is throughout the country with some of these increases. And, you know, I wonder, I hope we're not to a point where there's just a rubber stamp, okay, here you go.
Right.
I'm not saying don't allow the insurance companies what they need. They have to be able to provide. We can't have them short of cash, but a lot of times, like if you've ever been in sales outside of owning your own business, there's some pushback for your boss for accountability. Doesn't mean you're in trouble. And I like a balance to, okay, go show me why your numbers are where it's at instead of just.
And they have a quota to meet too, you know?
Correct. And so do we with a lot of our carriers.
Yeah, I am actually starting to see a little bit of premium relief with some of the carriers, which is really nice to see. That doesn't always mean they're competitive yet, but we're starting to see a little bit of movement in the marketplace.
On your home or your home and your auto?
Both. So here in Texas, I'm seeing a few carriers, 2, 3, 5%. But hey, that's better than nothing. That's a start, in my opinion,
It goes to that positive snowball we talked about, even for our customers.
Yeah.
When you find that your dollar's not going as far, whether it's the grocery store, fuel, your insurance, your property taxes, 5 or 6%, it is a lot better conversation, and it's more of a surprise to our customers now when you go, hey, your renewal's actually going down.
Versus having the 40, 50, 60% that I was having to explain a few years ago.
Yeah. So how do you personally define success?
I think everybody is a little bit different. I don't let myself give up, and I've already told you that. I'm a determined person. So I figured if, my doors are still open, I'm successful. There's food on the table for my family, I'm successful. I don't need a lot. I'm not a materialistic person, I'll shop at Walmart and Amazon. Like, I'm not that person that needs to have the name brand things, I do like nice things, don't get me wrong. I do like to have a nice car, a newer car, but to me, that's a necessity because that gets you to and fro. So,
yeah. Well, and I think another part, as I've got to know you, Your success is also your ability to balance and have your family time. That if you reached a point where you couldn't, then that probably would not be considered success, even though the income was going up.
Right. It's funny. I have relationships with different insurance agents in different states, right? So one good friend that I have in Arizona, she took time off to go to Disneyland, and she said she turned her phone off that day. And she said that was the most relaxing day she ever had. And I said, and she's like, but I live vicariously from you because you're always going on vacation and spending time with your family. And I said, but the thing is, I block out time to work. So I still feel a little overwhelmed. Or if we're in Florida on the beach, I am always thinking, okay, what work do I need to get done when I'm off of the beach and back at the motorhome? So it's always in the back of my head. So I told her, I'm like, one day I need to turn my phone off for the entire day. So maybe that's a good one for me for success. That would be a successful day because people will realize I'm human. Like, I'm not going to be able to answer right away all the time. I'll just put it out of office, So I'm looking forward to doing that soon.
As we plan, I find that the best way to predict the future is to go create it.
Yep.
And that creation can be either the dollar or the business that allows you to go on vacations and spend family time and still have a nice living and
Right.
find that balance. So how do you recharge when you're away from the agency without a vacation?
Well, I'm always with my family. So if I'm going to pick going out on the night with like some friends versus with my son and my husband, I'm going to pick my son and my husband 100 times over again. Like, for example, last night, after my son got off of school and my husband got home from work, he was barbecuing in the back. And so my son's playing golf. So I got my clubs out. I'm not a golfer, but we bought some clubs, right, for my husband and I. And so we were just practicing chipping in the backyard. And we did that until 7:00 at night, and the weather was great. So for me, just to be with my family is definitely my recharging, because my son and my husband have grown up knowing I am in insurance and there's not really a 9-to-5 job, because there's times where I have to work at night, and just so that way I can catch up and because I don't like to feel overwhelmed, I don't like to have a lot of to-dos on my list. And so my son has always known this. And because I work 2 different time zones, being with Arizona and Texas, he realizes, okay, 5:00 is not mom's turning off time. It's more like 7. So I kind of will screen my calls more later in the day. But sometimes I do have to pick up the phone. And he realizes that, and he's okay, mom, 10 minutes.
So I know before you moved into the house you're at, one of your hobbies was chickens. What do you, now that you've sold and you're in a neighborhood back so that your son has more access to friends and activities, what are some of your hobbies or passions now?
Well, we go on a golf cart ride almost every night, and their thing is to go down to the orbit in the neighborhood, and they'll go grab some ice cream, and then we'll go out on a golf cart ride throughout the golf course and throughout the neighborhood. We'll do that for like an hour. We do it almost every night, and it's just nice and relaxing, especially if the weather's getting a little bit nicer. So I do miss my chickens. I have had a conversation about maybe getting some more chickens, but you have to be strategic living in a subdivision on what kind of chickens you can get, because some of them are a little bit louder than others, but definitely miss them.
Well, it sounds like your number one inspiration outside of your business that drives your business is actually your family.
100%. 100%. My husband grounds me. He motivates me and he pushes me and he helps me bring me back to reality too.
So he is not just your husband. He is your best friend.
100%.
That is fantastic. So what advice would you give someone starting out in insurance today?
Just do it. Just get out there and do it. Don't be scared, because if you're going to be scared, you're not going to be successful. And if you're somebody like me who it won't fail, that's just not even in my universe of a vocabulary failure. Just do it.
Yeah, I also think along with just do it, go learn your product.
Right.
Don't just sling policies because you can write them. If you don't understand the coverages, That's what I think with some of the younger generation that we need coming in. Go use your personality to make your money, but truly learn your product so you can educate your customer.
That, and don't offer so many products that you don't understand what's going to be a good fit for them. So for me, I do personal lines, and yes, I dabble in commercial, but because that's not my jam and I'm feel so fish out of water, I give it to you, and then I have a referral in Arizona that I give it to. Do not do life or do not do health. I don't dabble in everything because everything's going to get mushy, and then you're not going to be professional at what you do know. And so that's definitely one thing. If somebody is starting out, focus on one product and then go from there.
Yeah, I think that if new salespeople, whether they're sales or customer service, if they would just make sure they understand, you don't need your customers to be an expert, but you do need your customer to be somewhat knowledgeable. What little knowledge they have will trigger them to tell you when there are changes. Because so many times I find customers, whether it's your personal lines or the commercial side, well, I've got insurance. They don't realize that certain changes they've made, you're not covered now. Excluded drivers have become huge, that were not as big. You've got a grown kid. If they're not living under your address, then they can come borrow your car like anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
If they're living under your address,
permissive use is not.
Exactly. So I think it's little things like that a lot of us can get so busy we don't think about, and that's stuff that we've got to be educating customers with. For me, it's the audit side for the general liability workers' comp policies for businesses. They tend to think we've paid our policy for the year, then we're done. But that's not the case. We've got to stay on track of, is your employee salary base growing? Is your income outpacing what we reported? And that's part of our job. It's not just to sell and be done with it. So what is the best advice you've ever received?
Well, that's going to be from my husband, and that's for me to just go and do it, because I was so reluctant to leave AAA because they treated me really well. That's all I really knew in the insurance world. So to go do something so foreign that I did not have even a % of knowledge of doing, and then just doing it. And I'm still learning day by day, because you say I have like all my processes in order, but do I? Sometimes I'm like, okay, do I have my life together? But it's working. Whatever I'm doing is working. And so I'm not going to change it until it doesn't work anymore.
I found that mentorship, and the community of agents that we can put around us, that helps speed up our learning curve, and it helps better protect our customers. I will call you with questions. You will call me. I don't find other commercial agents as my competition. What I find them is a resource. Right. Because I don't know everything. And I like treating my what others can view as competition as an ally and a friend. Right. So that we feel comfortable to call each other and go, I've never seen this before. Right. Because we don't know everything. We haven't experienced everything, but different agents can maybe give you a little bit of 2 cents because maybe they have been in that situation or been in front of that type of risk, whereas you haven't. So it's nice to have other people in your wheelhouse who you can talk to. Right now, I find that our businesses grow based on seeds we plant, and it's not always instant growth. Think about it. If somebody is sitting under a shade tree today, it is because somebody planted that tree years ago. It's building the pipeline. It's not going to be overnight. If somebody comes to me and they want a quote, I might not sell it that day. And you know what? That's okay, because I would rather them think about it and make sure that it's going to be the right fit for them. Because my goal is just to educate you on what I'm offering. I'm not selling. I'm offering, and I'm educating you on what I have presented to you. And you need to make the decision if it's going to be right for you and your family. And then I want you to come back with questions. I don't want this to be an instantaneous thing. So like if you call an 800 number, they're going to try to sell you right on the spot. I'm not. I want you to think about it. I want you to come to me with questions or make any changes, And yes, things are changeable throughout the term, but it needs to be the right
time and the right fit for you. And there's so many independent agencies out there. We all offer the same product. So what differentiates one independent agency from another? For me, it's the communication. It's me picking up the phone. It's me responding to that email or that text. It's me being present with them versus them having to leave a message and me not calling them back for days on end. That's frustrating. They're not going to want to go with me.
I would say that outside of price, and sometimes even greater than price, and when I'm saying price, I'm talking huge increases. We've seen some home policies that have gone up $2,000. But the communication you're talking about, how many times have we heard, I'm calling you because I cannot get my agent to pick up the phone?
I hear that more times than you would think.
It frustrates people, and communication is pretty simple. You know, if you don't have the time to return your customers' phone calls, then go find something else to do or put an office manager in there to where you are no longer the face of your business, and let the office manager become the face of your business, or your general manager, whatever you want to call them.
When people are calling me to shop their auto or their home or both, I'll ask them, have you called anybody else? Have you shopped any other carriers? And they say, well, I've called and, I've given them my information. I'm just waiting to get a quote back, but it's been a couple days or whatever. I've heard so many different responses to that. And then once I quote them and then I get it back to them the same day, they're like, I'm still waiting for that other quote. And I said, okay, do you want to keep waiting or do you want to go with mine? Because, I just responded. And because that's kind of a sign. If they haven't gotten back to you and it's been a few days, are they going to respond that quickly if you have a change or a question? And 9 times out of 10, I don't say this, but they pretty much will say this to me like, what, they haven't even responded, but you're so quick. And so, yeah, I'm going to go with yours because you're responsive.
Yeah. So when you're talking to a customer, let's take home and auto. I know that you write others. Your customer on that first conversation, as we've discussed, a lot of customers do not understand coverages. What are a couple of key things you immediately want to point out when you present somebody with an auto quote?
So when I get off the phone with a client and I'm shopping their auto, we're talking about auto, I will email them because I believe in seeing it visually. Everybody's going to have different philosophies on how they send quotes or whatever. But I will email that to them and I will highlight certain key coverages or features that I want them to kind of look at because either they have the same coverages, but mine may be a little bit better, or they don't have that coverage like car rental or towing, right? And it's a single vehicle household. I'm going to want you to have towing and car rental in case something happens, but your current policy doesn't have it. So I'm going to highlight that and I'm going to let them know it's optional, but here, this is what the premium's going to look like with it. We can quote without it, whatever you want to do, but I recommend this. And then we'll have a conversation about it, but I will always email it. I'm not going to be that person who's going to say, okay, just email it to keep me on the phone while you review it. No, because it's not always an opportune time for them. So I want them to do it when they actually have a moment to read it and digest it.
Do you explain to them how the split limits work? I've found that a lot of customers, my goodness, they could be driving for 20 years, and I'm not going to say an agent had not told them. But when I ask them, do you know how this works? Now with commercial, I write more combined single limits than split limits. But
in the commercial side, there's also more combined single limit options, whereas not every carrier will provide a split limit option.
Yeah, and was that different in Arizona or in California? Because Kansas will do a lot of combined single limits on their personal auto.
No, probably 99.9% of my clients have split limits. So when you're asking, do clients know? No, they have no idea what the difference is between combined or split limits.
Is that one of the things that you explain to them so that they get a better understanding?
Sometimes, because not every carrier that I offers combined single limits or split limits. So sometimes it's one or the other. And most of the time it's going to be split limits.
Yeah. And I've found they need to understand how it works because there are a couple of companies out there that love to throw state minimums at people. So when they come to shop you, they're doing state minimums. I don't know about you when I was writing personal auto. I think maybe I only had one or two policies in my whole book that was state minimums. And you're going to sign an understanding document that states, I've told you that this is not a good idea. Do you explain to them how those coverages actually work?
So when I see somebody that has state minimum, for example, I will provide them a quote unquote apples to apples liability limit. And then I'm also quote them an optional limit. Like if they're a homeowner, I'm going to start with a higher limit. So that way they get both and they can see what the premium difference is, because 9 times out of 10, the 6-month or monthly difference really isn't going to be that much for that extra peace of mind. But what I also see a lot is rejected, uninsured, and underinsured motorists. And I will not offer somebody no uninsured and underinsured motorists. Like if they want me to be their agent, they're going to have to select those limits, because that's what I stand by. I've seen way too many accidents where they needed the uninsured and underinsured motorists.
We do live in a different world than we did, say, 10 years ago as far as needing that uninsured or underinsured motorist.
Right.
So as we wind down this fantastic conversation we've had, tell me why Allegiance. Give me your
where did
your
it come
Lone Tech
from?
commercial and what brought the name on, and then kind of explain why people want to do business with you.
So I wanted to show up towards the top of the phone book, would you say, right? The list, the chamber has a list. We don't even have phone books these days, but same concept, right? So I wanted to show up at the top. I wanted it to be an A, right? And so I was kind of just doing some research. What are some good business names that starts with an A? Well, I feel like I'm loyal and I'm trustworthy. And so allegiance, like Pledge of Allegiance, if you look up the definition, is just that. So it just kind of fell. And I used to have a license plate in Arizona that said America, and so I just kind of fell into that and it became Allegiance Insurance Agency.
That is awesome. Mine is because the first name, if you know what my business is,
Mm-hmm.
people go, what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
You are a genuine person, and, there is no doubt where we stand with you.
Right. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be transparent, even if that means me telling that client to stay where they are.
So what is your best attribute? Why choose you over another agency?
I kind of touched upon it a minute ago, that there's so many independent agencies. We all offer just about the same products. So what is the difference? If they're going to call somebody, they're going to get me. They're not going to get their customer service rep and then not be able to talk to the agent. They're going to get me. They're going to be stuck with me. Like I get to know them personally. And I think that's what sets me apart, is that I am smaller and they get to build that relationship with me and not a different employee at the agency. And they're like, well, I was talking to so-and-so, but she's not there today, but I just had a question. And then you have to tell the story all over again to somebody else. So that to me is what sets me apart from other agencies.
We're going to go into the lightning round.
All right.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Favorite vacation spot?
I would say probably Pensacola or Destin. We go there often.
First car?
I bought my first car on my 18th birthday. I had saved money. I saved about $8,000, and then I bought my first Toyota Tacoma. It was $13,000, so I had to finance the rest.
Well, sweet. Biggest risk you've ever taken?
Opening my agency.
This is something I want to see if you can do. I couldn't do this.
Okay.
One word that describes you as a business owner.
Honest?
I would agree.
Thank you.
Now, if you would, please tell everybody how they can get in touch with you if they want to come and get a quote for you, or have you evaluate their insurance for them and kind of let them know and do a risk assessment on them.
Well, when you call, you're only going to talk to me, nobody else. Ashley with Allegiance Insurance Agency. My phone number is 928-466-6110. And no, I never changed my phone number from Arizona. Now that I'm in Texas, it is stuck and it's going to stick. And I'm unfortunately not going to change it.
Hey, thank you so
Thank
much
you
for coming on. This was a lot of fun. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Genuine Business Stories. If you're enjoying the show, we'd love for you to consider to be a sponsor or make a donation back to the station, Lone Star Community Radio. Or simply share this episode with a friend, a neighbor, or fellow entrepreneur. And hey, if you know a small business owner with a story that's worth sharing, have them reach out to us. They just might be our next guest. Until next time, keep showing up, keep building, and keep it genuine.